All right. Going live. And it does not appear we're live yet. We're live. All right. Awesome. Freaking blossom. So, today we are going to make this a little bit smaller. That's what she said. Today we're going to go over Chilli's 5A cop cards. Why? Well, we went over them before, but they were in the middle of a live stream. I wasn't really ready for it, and my answers were crap. So I'm going to call a redo and do it what we like to call the right way, and see if we can't get you some good answers. So we're going to start, I think, with I don't know. Should we start off with the driver or with the passenger? I think we'll start off with the passenger. Why not? So the passenger cop card starts off with a cop sighted or sighting. So if you're a passenger or a pedestrian, as soon as you see a cop sighted, you start filming. Why? Because you want to draw as much attention to yourself as you possibly can. Because why not? Why not increase the opportunity for you to have a encounter with the police? And of course, the more likely it is that you have an encounter, the more likely it is that you have a negative encounter. So start filming immediately. As soon as you see the cop, start filming and say, "I invoke my rights to the First Amendment." Because that's what sane and normal people do, right? That's exactly what sane and normal people do. If you don't have to invoke your right to the First Amendment. Your First Amendment protects speech. If you're speaking, your First Amendment is in play. If you're recording, your First Amendment is in play. Now, some people like to make great hay out of Garland v. Price that says recording is not expressive activity. That is a dookie. That is a very dookie holding. It is a holding that was intended to get a result, and they used just absolute garbage logic to get there. The garbage logic they used was that, well, you're not expressing anything if you're just recording it, but you're also not expressing anything if you're just writing. Like if you're writing a book, you're not expressing anything until you actually publish the book. So until you publish the book, the government can, at its whim, apparently, not allow you to write, which of course would make it so they could suppress your actual expressive activity, because if you can't write the book, you obviously can't disseminate the book. So you'll never actually get your language out. You can't. If recording is not expressive activity, then they can prevent you from recording a video, for good, bad, or otherwise. It could prevent you from recording a campaign video, right? That's campaign. Political speech is one of the two most basic core things in the First Amendment, and it is any restrictions on political speech are the most highly scrutinized. But if it's not expressive until it's actually like broadcast, then if you want to record a campaign video or an anti politician attack ad or whatever, the government can immediately just shut that down, because that's not expressive activity until it's so you have to actually live stream producing your campaign ad. If you want to record a sermon, religious speech, right? Another one of the big two, the holy duo of the First Amendment. If you want to record a sermon, then that also is an expressive activity, so it's not protected by the First Amendment until you actually broadcast it. So Price versus Garland is just terrible shit. But anyway, that being said, you don't have to invoke your First Amendment right to press and speech. So that's stupid. And he doesn't cite a case for it. You don't have to invoke anything. All right. So if the cop approaches you and says any words at all to you, any words at all, hi, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Hey man, your zipper's down. I invoke my First Amendment right, or my Fifth Amendment right. Have a nice day. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Jesus Christ. So the Fifth Amendment in and of itself does not prevent a cop from questioning you in and of itself. Now, once you're arrested, then the Fifth Amendment starts to do some additional protections. Once you're arrested, Miranda says basically once you're arrested, Miranda versus Arizona. Do I have Miranda up? Here's Miranda. This is Miranda versus Arizona. You look it up yourself. Once you're arrested, your Miranda rights kick in. They call them your Miranda rights because they're based on the Fifth Amendment and or the Due Process Clause. You could tell me which way, but when you're in custody, these rights kick in, and before you get questioned in custody, I not detained but arrested in custody. They have to advise you of your Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to counsel. If you can't afford counsel, counsel will be appointed for you. If you invoke, so they say, do you understand these rights? Yes. Do you still want to talk to us? If you say yes, well, then you're pretty fucking stupid. But at any time after you start talking to them, you could be like, whoa, this is going further than I wanted it to. I'm going to invoke my right to counsel. I'm going to invoke my right to remain silent. With minor exceptions, at that point, they have to stop. They can't ask you any more questions. Now, you can effectively waive your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent if you keep talking. But again, this only applies. It only applies after you've been arrested. So in his hypothetical, where if the cop approaches you and says any words at all to you, it does not apply. The cop does not lose qualified immunity for questioning you. And I'm not entirely sure what you'd be able to sue a cop for if he asks you more questions. Normally where you see something like this is you see it where the defendant is trying to suppress a statement that he made during questioning. So that's normally where it happens. I guess theoretically you could sue. I mean, it is deprivation of rights, right? I'm sure. But I'm not entirely sure what your damages would be. So maybe you could sue, but you're not. It's not going to be a common thing. And the losing the qualified immunity, I don't think, is going to be a huge deal. Number 3, if the cop asks you to exit the vehicle, exit and state, I plead the Fifth Amendment, and I do not consent to searches or seizures. And that's 1997, Maryland versus Wilson. Cop believes you're armed and presently dangerous. And we're going to start a little bit before that. We're going to start off on Pennsylvania versus Mims. Now, Pennsylvania versus Mims is kind of what got this ball rolling. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, the cop stopped a vehicle. The driver, he asked the driver to step out. As the driver was stepping out, he noticed a bulge under his jacket that he thought was going to be a firearm. So then he Terry frisked the driver, and turns out it was in fact a firearm. So in Pennsylvania versus Mims, the big question the court wanted to answer was not the pat down, but it was the inquiry must therefore focus not on the intrusion resulting from the request to stop the vehicle or from the later pat down, but on the incremental intrusion resulting from the request to get out of the car once the vehicle was lawfully stopped. Placing the question in this narrowed frame, we first look to that side of the balance which bears the officer's interest in taking the action that he did. The state freely concedes that the officer had no reason to suspect foul play from the particular driver at the time of the stop, there having been nothing unusual or suspicious about his behavior. It was apparently his practice to order all drivers out of their vehicles as a matter of course whenever they had been stopped for a traffic violation. The cop does not have to, as Chilli states, suspect that you're armed and presently dangerous to have you exit the vehicle. So it went on from there to Michigan versus Long. And in Michigan versus Long, they went on to say, Did I scroll away from it? Well, in Michigan versus Long, they talk about being able to order persons out of a vehicle. And in Michigan versus Long, uh, they were able to search. They were able to search the passenger compartment of the vehicle. And the reason why this is they call this like the wingspan rule, or it's been a long time since I've had to deal with one of these. I think they call it the wingspan rule. But basically, they can search not just you, but any area that you can access, like from the driver's seat. So they can essentially search the interior compartment of the vehicle in a frisk if they have reasonable suspicion. So it's kind of crazy, but they ordered persons out of the vehicle in this one. And then he went on to Maryland versus Wilson, and then this is what he's talking about. And in Maryland versus Wilson, they ordered the passenger out of the vehicle, not because anybody suspected anything was any foul play or anything like that. And remember that under Pennsylvania versus Mim, a police officer may, as a matter of course, order the driver to step out of the vehicle, and that extends to the passengers as well. So just the cops don't need any reason. They could just, as a matter of course, say, get the fuck out of the vehicle. We're gonna talk to you outside the vehicle. So that's Maryland versus Wilson. The cop does not have to believe that you're armed or presently dangerous. He does have to believe that you're armed. He has to have a reasonable suspicion that you're armed in order to pat you down. Then the next one is cop requests your ID, says he has reasonable articulable suspicion. He doesn't have to say he has reasonable articulable suspicion, but the response is while you're filming, apparently, because you have to be filming everything all the time, is to say, I plead the Fifth Amendment, identify as good citizen, no ID required. Hibble versus Nevada with reasonable articulable suspicion. Citizen must state how they ID. Do not give ID without probable cause. Well, that's not exactly what Hibble says. This is the Nevada Supreme Court. This is Hibble versus Sixth Court ex rel Humboldt. This is the Nevada Supreme Court case. Emphasis on Nevada. This is not the U.S. Supreme Court case. The suspect is not required to provide private details about his background, but merely to state his name to an officer when reasonable suspicion exists. Name, not good citizen, not what you, not to state how you identify, but to state your name. And the United States Supreme Court upheld that. They talked about how they talked about that specific holding in the Nevada Supreme Court. The Nevada Supreme Court has interpreted NRS yada yada to require only that a suspect disclose his name. Now, other states may have a different law or a different interpretation. So if you are in Nevada, you only have to give your name. But that doesn't mean that another state can't require you to ID otherwise. It doesn't mean that they can't have something that requires you to give your name, your address, and an explanation for for what you're doing. There are ID laws that have those requirements in them that have been upheld and have not been overturned, I should say. So be careful. His understanding of Hibble is somewhat. He applies it. He applies a portion of it that's specific to Nevada broadly across all states, and that's not necessarily a wise move. That could get people into trouble. And then number 5 is he says you tell the cop off. You tell the cop off. Vulgar language. Cop says he's going to charge you with this or that. Filming, state my right to free speech is protected by the First Amendment. First Amendment 1971. Cohen versus California. Cop loses his qualified immunity for arresting you. Cohen versus California. There was a California law that made obscenity, vulgarity. It prohibited it. And this guy walks into a courtroom with a jacket on that says "fuck the draft." And the Supreme Court says that you can't just make vulgarity unlawful, because vulgarity might be tied in with protected speech, religious, or political speech. Like if I say fuck Donald Trump or fuck Joe Biden or fuck Robert Kennedy or fuck anybody, fuck any politician, right? Fuck all the politicians. How about that? That that would be protected speech. The fact that I used a swear word in it, you can't criminalize it just because I used a swear word in it. However, there are things like fighting words, not fighting words. Fighting words are an exception to the First Amendment. So that's Chaplinsky. I don't have it up, but that's Chaplinsky versus what, New Hampshire. And the fighting words exception exists. So, for example, the Second Circuit. This is from a just a recent case. This is from the Eastern District of New York. They're just citing other cases, and so it's all in quotes. So you could go ahead and read the cases it's citing. The Second Circuit has held that speech directed at police officers is protected unless it is, quote, likely to produce a clear and present danger of a serious substantive evil that rises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or arrest. So there is a possibility that you could get arrested for disorderly conduct by, quote, telling the cop off. There is a possibility. So be aware of that. I would never recommend that you tell the cop off just to tell the cop off. That doesn't do anybody any good and exposes you to potential liability. So be careful with that. And again, Cohen versus California dealt with a specific California law that was overbroad, that outlawed obscenity, vulgarity, just the word itself. Fuck itself was. Actually, I think, was it a court rule? Was it a court rule? Because he went into court to do it. I don't remember exactly, but it was just because he had fucked the draft on his. No, it was California Penal Code 415, disturbing the peace by offensive conduct. He wore a jacket bearing the words "fuck the draft" in a Los Angeles courthouse. Yeah. So you can't make the simple public display of a four-letter word a criminal offense, and the reason why is because, again, it can be used in protected speech. All right. So then now we're on to filming. So if the cop says, "Let me talk, don't interrupt me," filming state my right to free speech is protected by the First Amendment. And then he's citing to Houston versus Hill. He says it's your right to interrupt police. Well, that's not exactly what Houston versus Hill held. And I have Houston versus Hill up here somewhere, or at least I thought I did. City of Houston versus Hill. All right. So the issue in Houston versus Hill was a city statute that made it an offense to interrupt police officers, and the problem is that it was overbroad. That's the issue. It was overbroad. So if you're just using speech to interrupt the officers, well, you can't criminalize just using speech to interrupt officers. However, there can be disorderly conduct statutes that may come into play that won't protect you. Houston versus Hill does state some language about. So it's not limited to fighting words, nor even to obscene or opprobrious language, but prohibits speech that in any manner interrupts an officer. So if they had limited it to fighting words or obscene or opprobrious language, etc., and there was some language in here that was really good. Hmm. There was language in here that was good, and I don't remember where it was. So the question is, do I keep looking for it until I find it? It's right in here, right? Here it is. Here's the language they were talking about. Is nevertheless protected against censorship or punishment unless it's shown to produce clear and present danger of serious substantive evil that rises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or unrest. Um, for example, the appellant was found to have yelled obscenities and threats at an officer who had asked for appellant's husband to produce his driver's license. The appellant was convicted, yada yada. A properly trained officer may be reasonably expected to exercise a higher degree of restraint than the average citizen and thus be less likely to respond belligerently to fighting words. Uh, but the problem was that it wasn't limited. So, so it can catch officers just because they're an officer doesn't mean that necessarily you can abuse them verbally however you want. There may in fact be limits. There may in fact be constitutional limit or limits that are not in violation of the Constitution. So be careful. Talk to a local attorney. Your state might have a very strong um, disorderly conduct statute that is constitutionally strict enough to catch things like abuse on police. All right, now we have this is for the driver. So as soon as the cop is cited or citing a cop, you start filming. So you're driving and then you whip out your phone and you start filming. There are a lot of states that have laws about distracted driving, having phones in your hand or cameras, something in your hands that may, in fact, give the officer probable cause or reasonable suspicion to pull you over. So I would not recommend, if you are driving a vehicle, to immediately start filming every time you see a cop. Again, that's more likely to attract the cop's attention. It may place you in violation of vehicle codes, transportation codes, what have you. Um, and you're sitting, you see a cop, you're sitting in your car, you start filming, you say, "I invoke my First Amendment right." Okay, bro. Like it doesn't do anything or change anything. Philip Turner in Turner versus Driver did not invoke his First Amendment right. If we look for, hold on, invoke. So there's no invoke anywhere in Turner versus Driver. So why he's citing Turner versus Driver for invoking your First Amendment right, I don't know. Despite Turner not invoking his First Amendment right, his First Amendment activity is protected. It's protected speech. Now, one other thing that you might want to be aware of is reasonable time. Come on, come on. So, a First Amendment right to record the police does exist, subject only to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. So this right to record the police is not unlimited. It's your right to film the police, yes, but it is subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. Now, the issue is with that there are different circuits that have interpreted what this time, place, and manner restriction means. Most circuits are applying this to a public forum analysis, i.e., uh, your right to film the police exists in public. As the First Circuit explained, filming of police officials engaged in the news in a public place. What they have done is they've interpreted that. Most circuits have interpreted that to mean that it's a traditional public forum. What's a traditional public forum? Parks, streets, sidewalks, traditional public forum. Or a limited public forum where filming is being allowed. Like in, was that Smith versus the City of Cummings? They were wanting to record in a, no, they referenced a case in Smith versus City of Cummings where somebody wanted to record in a city council meeting or something like that. I forget. But the important thing is that you're if you're not in a traditional outside of the First Circuit, if you're not in a traditional public forum, this rule doesn't apply, or at least it doesn't apply as strongly. So be very, very careful. And always be concerned that there may, in fact, be a reasonable time, place, or manner restriction affecting you. Um, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So talk to a local attorney. Talk to an attorney who's familiar with your state's laws and with whatever any reasonable time, place, or manner restrictions on filming may exist, on how your particular circuit has interpreted this right, if it has, how your particular state has interpreted the right, if it has. Just be careful. Talk to a local attorney. Don't take this nitwit's 5A card to heart. So then if the cop approaches and says any words at all to you, if he says license and registration because he's just pulled you over, instead of handing him your license and registration, keep filming and say, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Same analysis as before. It only kicks in on arrest. Miranda kicks in on arrest. I don't recommend you answer any questions from the cop, ever, even if you're not arrested, but the cop doesn't lose qualified immunity for questioning you on a traffic stop. If he did, boy howdy, wouldn't that be fun? But just the pure lack of cops not getting sued for questioning people in traffic stops should be the clue that you need to know that it doesn't work that way. The cop asks you to exit the vehicle. We've gone over this. Oops, is the pat? Hold on a second. Hold on. Here we go. Sorry, mea culpa. A cop approaches, states alleged infraction, or questions you. Filming, give legal doc, state, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. That's fine, but again, it doesn't cause anybody to lose qualified immunity for questioning you unless and until you're under arrest. Cop asks you to exit the vehicle. Filming, exit, lock, show card, or state, I do not consent to searches or seizures. Pennsylvania versus Mims. Again, they can quite possibly still search the vehicle if they have reasonable suspicion that you're armed. If they have reasonable suspicion that you're armed. So be careful. Be careful. The wingspan rule. The wingspan exception to the warrant requirement. Something like that. I forget exactly what they call it. I just remember wingspan. If the cop requests to search your vehicle, we've gone over this before. This is Florida versus Jimeno. In this one, he gave the police permission to search the car. So I don't know why he cites this case. Don't give permission. Just don't give permission. Just don't give permission. So if the police request to search your vehicle, say no, I don't give consent. They'll try to pressure you. They'll be like, well, I mean, if you don't let us search your vehicle, what are you trying to hide? Something like that. They'll try to pressure you. They'll try to get you to give consent. Don't give consent. You don't have to give consent and then revoke it. Just don't give consent. Cop says he smells weed in a state with legal, medical, or recreational marijuana. Filming, show card, or state smell is not probable cause. Probable cause is determined by a judge. It's not determined by you. It's not really determined by the cop, although the cop has to believe that he has probable cause in order to make the arrest. He could be wrong. He could be wrong and lack probable cause. But as long as he reasonably believed he had probable cause, well, then he's good. Because he can make a mistake of fact or law, a reasonable mistake of fact or law. And yeah. So anyway, Commonwealth versus Barr is of course, Pennsylvania case. It only applies to Pennsylvania. And fun fact, this is Commonwealth versus Davis. It's a 2022 case. You'll notice Commonwealth versus Barr is 2021. And this is Commonwealth versus Davis, another Pennsylvania case. In this case, he also tried to suppress the smell of marijuana, but the smell of marijuana wasn't the only thing. So just if it's only one thing, if it's only the smell of marijuana, then in Pennsylvania, the smell of marijuana alone is not sufficient. But in this particular case, under these circumstances, the officers had reasonable suspicion that criminal activity by way of a drug deal was underway. The meeting at the parking lot was at the suggestion of the drug dealer, who was contacted by a reliable, confidential informant. The Black Lincoln arrived at the designated time and place of the apartment complex. There were no other vehicles parked in the area of the planned drug transaction. Officer Locke smelled a strong odor of marijuana, but it was not that single fact alone that caused him and the other task force members to approach the suspected car dealer's vehicle. Heroin was observed in plain view, and the defendant was found to be sitting on a firearm while he was being removed from the vehicle. Uh, so, so what I'm trying to say is that just because you're aware the officer smells weed doesn't mean that there might not be other things that the officer knows. Because again, he doesn't have to tell you everything, and if he is telling you he smells weed, he might be just trying to get you to talk or to do something else that gives him more probable cause. Finally, cop says he's calling in a drug dog. Filming, show card, or state extending the stop violates my rights. And a cop cannot extend the stop to call in K9 without reasonable articulable suspicion. And that is Rodriguez. Yes, without reasonable suspicion, you can't extend the stop past when the reasonable suspicion is cleared up. So you can't delay writing the ticket or whatever. But until you're done writing the ticket, you're not delaying the stop. And so there are cases like this one, U.S. versus Reyes, where they say the protection of the Fourth Amendment extends to vehicle stops and temporary detainment of a vehicle's occupants. After lawfully stopping a vehicle for a traffic violation, an officer's actions must be reasonably related in scope to the circumstances that justify the stop of the vehicle in the first place. The stop may last no longer than necessary to address the traffic violation, and constitutional authority for the seizure ends when the tasks tied to the traffic infraction are or reasonably should have been completed. Those tasks include checking the driver's license, determining whether there are outstanding warrants against the driver, and inspecting the automobile's registration and proof of insurance. Cops may ask questions unrelated to the purpose of the stop while waiting for computer checks to process, but officers must diligently pursue the investigation of the traffic violation. The Fourth Amendment tolerates additional investigation unrelated to the safe and responsible operation of the vehicle only if that investigation does not lengthen the driver's detention or is supported by reasonable suspicion of additional criminal activity. If the officer develops reasonable suspicion of such activity in the course of the stop and before the initial purpose of the stop has been fulfilled, then the detention may continue until the new reasonable suspicion has been dispelled or confirmed. So in this case, the officer stopped a gal for speeding. She was giving weird and conflicting answers about she's picking up kids in this city, but they weren't her kids, and then she wanted to get out and smoke, so he let her out. And she didn't have a lighter. The lighter was in the vehicle, but she didn't want to go back into the vehicle because she was being all cagey and everything. So they got a drug dog out there, and it sniffed, and it turns out that she had methamphetamines. And so she tried to suppress it, and guess what? The court said no. So handing this card to the cop won't do anything because, again, it's going to be a court that adjudicates whether or not there is probable cause, whether there was reasonable suspicion, when and what reasonable suspicion was completed by the time the dog got there, or what have you. All right, so those are the cards. They're garbage, as everyone expected. No one is really surprised by that, I'm sure. Oops, we need to go live chat. My bad. All right, so we have Jason R says Merb. Mary Smith says sup Merb. Jason R says dogs, please. There's Patty's laying over there. Kenzie's laying over there on the deck. Patty's on a ramp. Kenzie's on a deck. Deck, not dick. D-E-C-K. I have no idea where Siobhan is. Lou Skunt has salute. Mr. Waldo DeBaldo says, Merb, you son of a bitch. He says, you taint on my goddamn shoulder. I don't know what that means, but I bet you're having a great Sunday. So good for you. Alan Killian says, good morning, John. Good morning to you, Alan. Nima says, hey, Nima. Scissor says, bring it on. It was brought. Griffey says, oh, yeah, I've been waiting for Merb to do a breakdown on this one. You got it. Mr. Waldo DeBaldo says, your chickens haunt my wet dreams, cuck a dude a do. Very Legal Brief says, Chili getting done the right way is a first. Yes. Native River says, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. Scissors, the untrustworthy clown, says, yeah, screw that waiting for a cop to engage. Yeah, just start yelling at the police. Just randomly. I invoke my First Amendment right to defend the police. Just out of nowhere. Weird as shit, dude. Darkly Noon says, sup. Lindy Pindy says, is Chili here in chat? I don't think so. I doubt it. Delete Lowell says, he needs to use a better font. The SA cop card, it's 5A cop card, makes it read like a card for sexual assaults or something. It's a 5. That looks like a 5 to me. Griffey says, yet another failed adventure by Chili. Yet again, he has no idea what he's talking about. This card is doomed to fail. Well, the true faithful will buy it. There's always, as humans, we are so tribal. And we've kind of lost tribes in creating these large societies that are really fractured. Children don't stay with their parents. They move out onto their own, which is weird. I mean, humans never did that before. We lived in very tribal societies with extended families and everything like that. So we have this desire, this social desire to be part of a tribe, and so we pick a sports team to be a part of, or a political party to be a part of, or frauditors or anti-frauditors, or pro-Chili or anti-Chili. We pick. So it's kind of human nature. It's kind of human nature. Mr. Waldebald says Chili actually knows a lot and has more subs. So I don't know entirely what that means. Just because he has more subs doesn't mean anything. Delete Fun says, I'm going to release my board game tomorrow. I've heard about his board game. I didn't know it had been released yet. So that'll be interesting. Delete Will says, I'm going to release my board game first. Well, it's a two-way shootout between who's going to release the board game first. Ed says, Mr. Waldo knows a lot of BS, and Chili knows a lot of BS, and anyone who relies on his knowledge is a fool. Well, I mean, you got to remember, Ed, that my crowd is probably not chock full of Chili supporters. So Mr. Waldo DeBaldo probably is not one. I'm just saying. He's probably just trolling you, and he's getting the attention that he so desperately wanted, and you're giving it to him because, well, you desperately want to point fingers and shame Chili, and he's not here for you to do that too. So it's unfortunate. I get what you want to do, but he's just trolling you, bro. He's just trolling you. Lindy Pindy says, finally, the board game. And she spells it boars, and it's boring. Haha. Griffey says, at delete lols. What about the transparency app? Have you finished that? Again, it's not delete laws, but you probably do that. Maybe you're just having fun. You're funning them back. I'm going to say you're smart enough that you're funning them back, Griffey. Mr. Walter Balda says, have you ever talked to him, Ed? Native River says, how is everyone? Delete lol says, transparency peas just ice. Site has been up for ages. Okay. Lindy Pitty says he puts himself on YouTube. Waldo. Native Verb says, I forgot about the board game. Nima says, hit the like button. Lindy Pindy says, I think Waldo is Chili. I don't think so. Waldo says, I'll side with you. Merb mostly knows his shit, but Chili actually has some good knowledge. And actually, when you can truly talk to him, he's a down-to-earth guy who cares. He might care. I'm going to press X to doubt, but he might care. Ed says, Waldo, I've tried to, but he and his mods block me. I don't have to talk to him to know he's full of shit. I have enough of a legal education or Merb's insight to know he's full of it. Scissor says, does he think consenting beats Terry Frisk? Does he think consenting beats a Terry Frisk? Florida versus Jimeno, this one? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what Chili thinks. Waldo says, I like to see it from both sides, so I watch Merb and Chili. I sided with Merb on some and Chili on some. I think all people should know both sides. Well, not all sides are created equal. I mean, there's the round Earth side and the flat Earth side. One side has tons of empirical and scientific evidence to support it, and the other side has nothing really. So you know, you could look at both sides, but not all sides are created equal. Welsh News Now says, I've been studying the U.S. Constitution lately. Can we talk about the 14th Amendment, Section 3? Like, just talk about it in general, or do you have a specific question on it? Because if you have a specific question, we probably look at it. Griffey says, what? Chili's 5A card is wrong? Shocking. I too am shocked. Native River says, hi, Welsh. Lindy Pindy says, sexual assault card. It's 5A. Ed says, should we call this Chili's unifold offering? I don't know. Delete Lowell says, yep, Chili's produced a sexual assault card. Alana Hayter says, good afternoon, Sir Ed, with hearts, a cat, and more hearts. That's a lot of, I mean, she really likes you, Ed. I think you might have a thing. Native River says, Dan, I think it's great that you're learning the Constitution. That's not Dan. Again, that's somebody else. Ed says, hey there, Alana Hayter. Happy Sunday. I hope all's well with you with a hand wave and a single heart. Oof. I mean, she gave you two, bro, and a cat, and you only give her a hi and a red heart back. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like you might be missing an opportunity. Griffey says, with all this negativity about his 5A card, you would think he would fix it to make it more accurate, to reflect actual case law. Knowing Chili, he will just leave it like it is. Probably. Orange Cone says, duck the Supreme Court. There you go. Welsh News Now says, fuck me, Merb. Well, you have to fly out here and, well, the person you're emulating needs to fly out here and suck my dick. Nima says, hey, Orange Cones. Orange Cone says, hello, Numa. Oof. Oof. Orange Cone says, overly broad. Is that a thing in male anatomy? Asking for a friend. I wish. I wish, Orange. I wish. The Pink Witch says there should be limits on verbal abuse on police. There should be, and there are. Fighting words would be an exception. But you could be very critical of police behavior. And we pay them to not violate our rights. We allow them to carry firearms in places where other people can't carry firearms, and to carry firearms that other people can't carry. Period. Like in California, well, I guess California you can own the firearms, but there's certain firearms that only police can buy, like pistols, and they can carry automatic and semi-automatic rifles, and your standard Joe Blow citizen can't without getting a tax stamp, et cetera, et cetera. And they can carry them and all this other fun stuff. So I mean, we give them a lot of power. We give them a lot of ability to inflict deadly force on people, and a lot of legal justification that gets them out of what other people like. If Joe Blow just pointed a gun at someone on reasonable suspicion, probably would get charged with something and might even be convicted. But cops do it all the time, and we give them that latitude. So with great power comes great responsibility. And while there should be some limits, I think those limits should be, like the case law holds, uh, broad enough or narrow exceptions enough so that people can voice their frustration with what the police are doing. Right or wrong, people should be able to criticize the police. Scissor says Chili was busted driving by recording a cop. Was busted driving by recording a cop. Yeah. He forgot to yell. It was his First Amendment right. Yeah. It's stupid what he wants people to do, and it's very likely to get you at least pulled over or detained or maybe even ticketed. Biff says, "What up, all?" Cause Circle says, "I think Chili got a ticket for filming while driving. Probably. Sounds like it." Andrew Rover says, in the course of their duties, does that apply? Would they have a meal break? Are you talking about filming the police in the course of their duties? Uh, does it apply? I don't know. Are they still on the public clock? If they're still in uniform, still in the public clock, I would say yeah. I would say yeah. Pat's Cat says hiya to Alana. Pat's Cat says hiya to Ed. Lynn says, I get it that if someone chooses to follow Chili's advice, it is on them, as he has no credentials in the field. But if someone does and gets in trouble, can they have a case against Chili? Probably not. Probably not. anybody can sue anybody for anything, but I don't know what actual cause of action they would have. Welsh News Now says, I see the future in my crystal balls, balls, balls. Lots of impressionable auditors will be spending time at the dungeon. I don't know of any auditors that give Chilli a lot of credence, but maybe there are because I haven't been following a lot of auditors. So there you go. Ed says, hey there, Pat's Cats, happy Sunday. Pat's Cat says, happy Sunday, Ed. Dave says, I would think that the cop that pulled you over has a list of possible offenses you could be charged with. You being mouthy means he could just add more. You can't prove anything. Yeah, so cops have a lot of discretion on whether or not they give you a ticket or don't give you a ticket. And I'm not saying to answer the cop's question, but you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, or at least that's how the saying goes. And so I would suggest to you that it's probably in your best interest as a potential donor to the state coffers through paying tickets. It's probably in your best interest to be polite, to be respectful, not necessarily to suck his dick or anything like that, or her dick, whatever. Uh, but you might want to not be a complete asshat, and you might just get a warning or something like that. Alana says, Pat's Cats, good afternoon to you. Ooh, the heart cat heart combo for Pat's Cats too. Maybe we have a little three-way action, Ed. Play your cards right. Ohio Steve says, what he is saying is they don't want it to apply. They will find a reason why it doesn't apply. What he is saying is they don't want it to apply. They will find a reason why it doesn't apply. I don't know what you mean by that, but maybe someone will educate me down below. Javer says, good afternoon, good morning. Going back to watch from the beginning. We'll enjoy Javers. Welsh News Now says, what about D's versus Nuts? I believe D's won. Dozy Mayer says, hey, Merb, so pleased to catch a live with you. All the best from Great Britain. All the best to you too, Dozy Mayer. Matt, Southeast Kentucky, says, afternoon, Merb and folks. Orange Cone says, what if you have a dog in your car when the driver is asked to leave the car while the drug dog sniff is to be done? My dog remains in or must be removed from the car. I don't know if there's any legal precedent on that. I, I'm going to say I would ask the officer what the officer wants. If the officer can order people out, the officer could probably order canines out. But the officer might not want the canine out. So I would say, hey, I have a dog. It's a big dog. Do you want it in the car or do you want it out of the car? Tomatoes says, can you pause the stream, Herb? I need to pee. Yes, I can. But I won't because you still haven't told me if it's tomato or tomato. Matt says only $5 to help you to jail. Oh, that's a bargain. A bargain. Pitbull Lover says, sorry I'm late to the party. Is he charging for these cards? Apparently, $5. Pat's Cat says, Alana with wave, wave, and then Kitty Cats with hard eyes. Watch News Now says, I just pee it in my adult diaper and continue watching. Pat's Cat says, so we now have cards instead of trifolds. I think these are supplemental to the trifolds and just as useless. At least, like if they were soft or something like that, you could at least use them to wipe your ass, but I don't think you could even do that. Ed says hi to Matt with a hand waving. Welsh News Out says, I play Go Fish with all of my cards. So that's pretty cool. Philip says, sorry, I am late to the party. Matt says, hey there, Ed. Javer says these capital letters with all the randomly applied first letter large cap probably pisses me off more as a graphic artist than the overall card does you as a lawyer. No, it's pretty jarring. Like it doesn't like he doesn't follow a lot of rules on any of this stuff. So Orange Cone says, of course Chili charges for the card. He is a grifter. Well, he's providing you something in return. What value there is to it is questionable, but he is providing you something in return. Philip says, what is he doing these days? He has gone quiet. I don't believe he's gone quiet. He streams fairly often from what I understand. I just think most people have stopped covering him. I don't sub his channel. I don't watch him, but every once in a while people will talk about what he said on his stream and how retarded it is. I would bet you he streams probably daily. Every time I do a stream, people are like, oh, you've got X number of people in your stream, and he only has Y number of people. So, and he has like 400,000 or whatever. So people are paying attention to him. So I don't know. Nevea says it's always a good day when you wake up and all the fish are still swimming. Have a great day, everyone. That is solid. Uh, I have so someone keeps telling me somebody, I think his name is Scotto. I think it was Scotto. Uh, kept telling me to try copper. So I took the fish out of the aquarium. I have fish with there's some bleeding heart tetras that a couple of them have these patches that look like fungus. I've treated them for fungus, treated them for parasites. I've treated them for bacteria, and he kept saying try copper. So I have netted them out into a 10-gallon quarantine tank that doesn't have any invertebrates in it, and I'm going to start treating them today. I netted them out yesterday, set up the tank yesterday. Anyway, they were rolling over and playing dead, and I thought for sure I'd lose one or two of them, uh, but but they're all alive. So that was the first thing I checked this morning. So yay! Philip says good evening from Bulgaria. Well, enjoy your Bulgarian evening. Captain Clown says definitely anti-fraud or anti-Chilli. Good for you. You've picked a team. Pat's Cat says Chilli buys subs. That is probably true. Captain Clown says shame is overrated. Okay. Ed says don't shame me, Merv. I'm just being tribal. I can't help it. It's just my nature. Well, it's most people's nature. It's a hard thing to get over. Desert Sentinel says old was given something similar by High Desert Community Watch 6 years ago. One thing Chile is missing is the STFU part. Um, did High Desert Community Watch also tell the cops to kick rocks? Nima says, "Hey DS." Philip says, "Let's have some likes, guys." Well, I like you, Philip. How about that? Captain Clown says, "Cool Ed." Orange Cone says, "Went to the range yesterday, shot 85 rounds, all hit the target, and all but 7 hit the target in a 9 or bullseye. Very good." Nima says, "Hey Ed." Welshman says, "Pure tribalism lends itself to inbreeding and buck teeth. Does it?" Uh, I don't think so, because humans were tribal until fairly recently. Desert Sentinel says, "Hello, Nima. Ben Lurkin." Ed says, "Hey there, Nima." Dave said, "Cop side of the road. Cop side of the road. Don't care for arguments. You can write a stack of tickets if you mouth off. He gets paid to show up in court anyway. You get to spend your time and money defending your mouth." That's basically it. Coded says, "Good afternoon, urban folks." Ed says, "Hey, Desert Sentinel." Desert Sentinel says, "Hey, Ed." Ed says, "I'm married to Merb. My wife only lets me give other women one heart." Well, it's probably good then that you're only giving them one heart. It's good play. Alana says, "Hey, Ed." Nemo says, "Is it the real Coded?" Captain Clown says, "Thank you, Uncle Ben." Coded friend, Spider-Man quotes, "Nice, Uncle Ben." Coded says, "Real Coded." Uh, Nima says, "Is it the real Coded?" Uh, Alana says, "Don't think so, Nima. I think there's meant to be friends, not friend." I think that's the real Coded. Uncle Ben. I think it's real Coded. I get to do this and go to channel. That's the real Coded. Uh, Nima says, "Thanks." Coded says, "You're welcome." Nima says, "Ha, okay." Scissor says, "Coded, you're late seeking attention." Ed says, "I've never been part of a throuple. I'm rather Victorian in that regard. It gets confusing. You only have one penis, and there's like it can only be in one place at a time. It's tough. Well, you probably only have one penis. I shouldn't judge." Lana says, "But Ed, is it on your bucket list?" Ed says it's a secret. Uh, Gov says, "I thought copper was toxic to fish. It's toxic to invertebrates, uh, but not to fish. It's pretty safe for fish. It's very toxic to invertebrates." Alana says, "Good times." Coded says, "No offense, but you come across as someone who needs attention, so hi and bye." Ed says, "I feel like I'm being recruited." Well, you better talk to your wife first, Ed. Chaos says, "My dad lost a whole tank of fish he had for years when he was trying to treat them, and the medication killed the whole tank." Yeah, yeah. I've been I I wasn't upset. So I had the fish in there, and I got new fish in, and so I'm like, well, I'm treating for parasites. I'll just quarantine the new fish in this tank, and we'll get them all treated at the same time, because I tend to quarantine my fish, but I was fucking medicating a tank anyway. But now that I'm going to be using copper, since I have invertebrates in the tank, that I had to pull them out and put them in a different quarantine tank. So there you go. So it says, at coded, yes, your reply got me off. Oof, nice. And Alana says, at Ed. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and have a great